Western economies, where Western UBI is expanding development, building its top part of the contains the CC, Eco Club, Cyber, and AI exchanges around 21. And the requirement for these members must move this requires expanding the economy, but not partner with Asia challenges, global health and climate, with the demand for national society support, what other leadership concerns, Cyber, and AI. It is the only country within the civilization associated. It contains internal instability, and refugee flows that are new war with Pakistan, Cliff 20. This is the conflict of Pakistan, warning for escalating conflicts, internal conflicts, in fact, security, dragon development contributes to include slowdowns in growth, crisis, disability, government, revolutions, countries, as well as the growth experience, conflict, aggressive, possibility, regime change, skill of fusions, political factors form, attacks, escalation between Pakistan and India as possible, very potential of nukes, independently, Brazil will follow on the initially modeled after US trials, but further expansion is key. The catch 20 transformation is really Brazilian invasion, but finally, proposals given net zeros seeking welfare states, many parts of the world's experiment of the US is going into the spirit, make up all business that is broad applicability, will have impact on the world, Brazil will push for basic income response to the United States to determine the shape of the world, deepening equal poverty, causing deforestation, collapse of Brazilian leadership, the Hot 20, the Nordic system include climate change, equality, failure, nations mitigated, the risk Brazil will play leading role in vast resources, 40% of resources, the forest and 20% of water, the Amazon is lost the world because collapsing is the most inequality, poverty, Brazil is possible to the worst survival, deforestation, irreversible by dry up, scrapping various targets, decreasing inequality, economic, political, the governments retreat from minority corporate, reverting nationalism, stagnation, Brazil suffering from tension status, backward unrest is not far behind, deforestation, gases, chemical compounds, extinction, highs 20, Amazon is for the chemicals crucial for ability, health, variety, energy, security, Amazon kills, infections, alterations, waterborne diseases, organisms, infections, threatening humanity, as well as establish unlock more time, useful of cards. Finally, solvency, the plain souls, and its revenue positive, overwhelming statistical and empirical evidence is not Greenhill 22, growing body research shows income over the evidence, GI would be every person amount of shows and quality relates to crime reduction, incarceration with hospitals, major changes for as well as savings systems data show, the participants find a woman study, fund expansion generate 10 times the most revenue use costs, all objection to basic income, have been competency to refute debate, critical literature, net career 20, just net company, and certain people, have been refuted in practical observation, service, numerous studies to design, including UBI, goes US institute, Russell, never refuted contrary reports to the, not sort of that FDF, suggest BI boost economics through, but by the study, and substantial improvement on any BI would provide saving option in any case, UBI works better than all welfare, basic income, the contains the debt crisis, credit crisis, but only if it coupled with robust debt reduction, lane 43, the debt is becoming raised about 40%, the trouble being slow income, Americans borrow expenses, the relocation was followed by high cost lending, credit limits because social net, the people fail to pay, companies short out social like it's now high bill for a way to recession rate, UBI ability to pay for credit, but only if it was able to access funds, rate reduction, move, equality, so that to people struggle, the expensive create professional debt cycles, and only a clearer signal is key, one poverty, lane 23, should BPI should see a bit into good debt, rewarding everybody debt protections, without no wages housing, and more of the taken to debt, the states, the patchworks, the clear on center protections to do affection, UBI implement absolute protection. I usually tell that card out.
Okay. Are you good?
Yeah.
Scissor, hands me the timer. Okay.
Actually, when you get to drink one.
Okay.
The extra card is sent.
Sweet.
Okay, I'm good.
Okay. Merchant says that the Alaska BI created a model that governments all over the world would be wise to follow. Why didn't they follow it?
The reason was because Alaska is a tiny economy and is very localized in a region that does not reflect other countries like of their region and a large national income that is more.
When I read that, I didn't see anything about why Alaska is like too local of an economy. It's not reflecting global interests.
Well, I mean,
What do you think it says that?
No. The Shivak evidence, the card right below merchant says that the reason Alaska model, and like even if it theoretically would have, it failed and it caused interest, but people didn't follow on. And our evidence says that a national model would definitely follow on.
Okay, why would a national model follow on? Just because the economy is bigger?
Well, one is that the economy is bigger. The U.S. generally, like the federal government, is viewed as a global economic superpower.
Sure.
It would incentivize other countries. Yeah.
I mean, India's already done pilot projects. Why didn't they stick with those?
Right. Those were too small scale, and India left them.
Well, sure,
but I don't know why they.
You've read an Indian modeling advantage. You read evidence that says that India has already attempted a BI, but that they stopped.
No, okay.
You read evidence that says that studies show that BI was efficacious. Why didn't they keep doing it?
India's BI was as big as like the stimulus check that happened during COVID. It was a tiny thing. It was never replicated in the future.
And you've read evidence that says that BI demonstrated success in India. Yeah. Why didn't they keep doing it?
I don't know. Like India's government had its own choices to not do it.
They couldn't scale up the program to reach the states like
why could they scale it up now?
Yeah, because of insufficient funding mechanisms. They would look.
They can scale it up because of insufficient funding.
Well, they didn't know how to fund it. They originally did things like deficit spending.
They don't know how to fund it. You just give people money.
The plan would set a stage for it because it would remove things.
Okay.
Like duplicative
what do they learn from the plan? What does India learn from the plan?
Yeah, sure. So they would remove redundant and duplicative welfare programs. We think that's
Oh,
really
what programs?
Yeah, sure. So unemployment checks. That's just the exact same thing as basic income, except the basic income does it better. We think.
Why does basic income do unemployment better?
Because an unemployment check hands money to unemployed people. A basic income
Does
does
a
the
basic
same
income
exact
not
thing.
hand money to unemployed people?
Yeah, well, correct. The point is that
These are like the basic
like there's also
check
other
does the same
programs
exact thing. A basic income solves it better. That's why cutting off of those or trading off of those.
Okay,
programs is
I think it's the merchant card also says that the Alaska BI is nowhere near enough to live off of. I think that's like $2,000 a year. How much is the basic income you provide?
I think normal means would be between 10 and 12K
Per year?
Yeah,
How,
and paid
how-
monthly.
how does that eliminate poverty? That's literally below the poverty line.
That's like $1,000 below the poverty line. Like sure.
It's like $4,000 below.
No, it's not. The poverty line is around 13.5K.
I think it's 17. But UBI shores up in development indicators. What indicators?
So the card talks about food, housing, healthcare. Our argument is that when people have money, like no strings attached, they could buy food, housing, and healthcare that they desperately need, which shores up those indicators.
Yeah, the evidence about why development's good talks about individual nations' geopolitical power. Why is that an impact filter for every country's safety?
It's not about geopolitical power. Are you referring to the merchant evidence?
No, I'm referring to the Wong evidence.
It's just like
Yeah, it's
internal
just development indicators are key for them to
Strong indicator of technological and geopolitical power.
That's not.
Alright, 1 and 2 is done.
How many?
6, yeah, 6. 6th in poverty and modeling.
Give me a second.
Can I get the order of case one more time?
Yes. Poverty modeling.
I'm good.
Okay. Everyone good?
First off, it's heat taxes, enter violation, redistribution requires taxation and spending. The plans only transfer its violence. Borneo 12, cheap distribution, government collects taxes, then it makes expenditure of tax, and public goods, collecting tax, then making expenditure changes, primary distribution of income, the post-tax or secondary distribution accounts for impact of taxation, spending, vote, nag, limits. There's an infinite amount of transfer only mechanisms, including the net research and ground tax, inter controversy, large change for the status quo, both key to net ground, econ is set. No recession now, Gobble 98. Rates that you're placing to path to Brazil while ensuring self-limited recession-free environmental markets effects have already occurred. Abatement of inflation as GDP remains positive throughout the projected CPI will drop below 2 by 24 citing inflation number Lizoni company meeting Goldilocks scenario ideal for financial markets Fed and inflation a near target quickly UBI collapses the economy fuels inequality Joy 18. Safety net does meet basic needs. Poverty decline to all-time low. UBI will raise taxes and destroy all dissented work payments at up to $3 trillion. Entirety that the revenue and tax will have to be raised dramatically beyond what is economically desirable. Money would come from lower class and reduced benefits or tax. UBI would negatively affect the incentive to work when benefits rose at work and earnings decline. The major study of UBI found a 40% decline in participation, 27% reduction in hours greater, and then the difference between high participation the lowest less work means fewer feelings of inclusion, worse mental health, extinction, transition, worse feeling, liberalism, and emergency attack. Row 16. Multilateral system purpose health, economically strong. U.S. China may never know how, but it could tarnish U.S. and development trigger a legitimate crisis for the party. Handlers have been contest division of the U.S., China, and Russian nuclear war. We are not wars, not an emergency come online. The truth lack of a global framework could be dangerous. There's no governance on the U.S. leadership. Deterring drone synthetic bio NATO without rules, risk, catastrophe, anarchism. The one to see invested hope for a resolution of our generalized social crisis and sovereignty. This failed model guarantees war, environmental destruction, and climate change, and extinction vote neg to autonomous collective organizing and a politics of questions that refuse the answers given by the state. Hallway 21. We live in a failed system resulting in the destruction of biodiversity, pandemics, warming, and the acceptance of money as the measure of value, changing equality, fashion, and change of states. Humans are facing outface with extinction. How do we get out of here? The traditional answer through the state. States leave a party. It does not work. The state is not. And the kind of way to capital. The state is generated by capital. State obliged for accumulation, state democracy, exclusion by city, or small state. They take it away from us. Small state taken over the radical agenda. No point question, yes, abolition, it is still hard to not to think the state is where answers lie. Give up answers that cannot be opposing anarchist state answers the question because the competing extinction never existed before politics. The question is different from politics. Answer asking is the creation of a different society. We have the Zapatistas inspired councils, the purpose movement, millions, organized anti-hierarchical basis, not true. The state is the only game. There's doing things ourselves collectively. If we reach 16, it'll be our fault. If we do not take back from the state responsibility of life, citizen juries counterpoint. The United States Federal Government should delegate to a randomly selected citizen oversight jury's authority make final binding determination policy regarding a basic income with protection for objectives that increases fiscal redistribution, including the permissibility of individual distributive exceptions and average sort of proceedings featuring evidentiary representation by unmasked expert witnesses supporting the case made by each side, delegating a specific narrow policy question to a citizen jury solves the case and demonstrates an effective while participatory governance that spills over broadly social back 19. Inequality tax program like by unaccountable technocrats who could derail those plans that helicopter extensor legislative agendas transformation and transformative reforms by cities and empowered to hold government accountable juries and resistant manipulation and oversight juries empowered to scrutinize over decision exert meaningful like a citizen jury set the agenda jurors that is know to handle the specific question. Experts help average format ensure jurors are who citizens have final say specific deals of prior experimentation that could not scare us. It's time to put on the agenda. The U.S. has the potential for broad appeal. Citizens never can weaken the government concentrated with participatory governance reform necessary to address a slew of existential threats to landers. 22. Warming, pandemic, migration, exploitation of resources, ethical conflicts, and democracy crisis are external threats. It is a question of how can government governance configuration choose the road forward to advocacy, reinvent practice, or search for sustainable democratic ways of handling risk politics instead. A continuing resolution to avoid shutdown passed now on bipartisan basis. The plan is a poison over both parties that caused massive backlash for 816. Congress has passed short of voting bill to avoid a shutdown. Congress not having enough time to reach a full year to streamer, and then with the party agreed to pursue CR Republicans colleagues look to work in a bipartisan way in the policy terms as the White House is seeking out a class notable spending on tax credit policy brings the Senate is avoiding a point from Congress order to push the deadline to achieve a longer deal. The Rose Committee chair floated a bill I fully accepted CR on latest September. The plan fans the flame of GOP rage and ensures a shutdown of protests wise 9-5. Republicans welcome like spending while no makes overtures aimed at course White House and accession we need to control when I spend the justified it's a time to do a call for more CR claiming companies to be rolling against a stopgap measure. The shutdown spurs disease outbreaks at later 9-6. Biden was funding for 8 health programs passing on will lead an uphill battle as the U.S. heads into respiratory infection shutdown when hamper efforts to tamp down the outbreaks. The CDC lose surveillance on what a system would shut down. The hesitation experts for low about 40% of its workforce. Extinction time minus 22. We have to plan how to face the next pandemic. Reverse pandemic, the existence of the human race pandemic could result in the shared limit on civilization and extinction. The new various mutations could evade by weakening antibodies. COVID helped us realize that we may be sitting on a timeout while billions of other rights are waiting to put in danger to the existence of other inhabitants of planet Earth. Safety net is sad. Passage of the plan necessitates left-right coalition getting the right on board guarantees dramatic cuts to the safety net grade C19. UBI approved quick tonic overcoming obstacles will require left-right coalition was voters for rest on a push to increase poverty. UBI costs $3 trillion a year. The cost of the entire federal budget outside SS Medicare defense and money from the new taxes are not plausible to vaccine require level taxation that exceeds anything in history. Hard to manage UBI supporters on the right advocate president over current wealth over state finance UBI millennium programs for UBI entails abolishing Medicaid UBI shifting income resources away from the poor Medicare Medicaid or cuts wreck rural hospitals. Schneider 17. Kaplan Medicaid will lead a large federal system of health care in rural America, making it the largest number, the largest insurer in rural America. Rural hospitals financially precarious because rural hospitals are so highly reliant on Medicaid revenue due to small reduction and federal payments are forced closure. Food shocks are immediate. Minus 16. If too many rural or get out of business, it becomes imagine now to health as large as where out of community collapse, people move away. Once thriving community becomes a from rural America produces food that needs to forever ways of grain to waste because no one works farmers that stores up dries up the price will go through the roof overnight. Nuclear war has false 17. Threats include ice North Korea, nuclear Iran, Russia, China, civil strife and migration. History showed stable price reduce sellers, secure countries, insecurity, municipality, food shocks correlated with the riots in Haiti, Madagascar, and the Arab Spring emerging markets. Produce 20% of U.S. exports going as possibility. A seen regional cross spending discipline strategy and secure countries deteriorate institutions war to will American stabilize key regions robust Swedish kids support the world security poverty advantage. No inequality impact best state in the early 16. Effects of inequality not toward hundreds of higher economic division except for the weaker relation, not even over borderline significance interaction effects of inequality were far from using multilateral regression. We tested whether conflict division correlated contrary to divisionary thing. Neither economic inequality nor diversity affected the relation. Inequality is inevitable and this grow should trigger all their impacts by 21.
I'm gonna have more time, so.
Pandora Papers exposed offshore financial links, global elites, and trillions of dollars in tax havens show foreign trust in opaque corporations. People are starving with all these living lavish abroad offshore accounts for illegal. International causes make inequality inevitable. None of their evidence is about domestic inequality, the modeling of it. Zero risk of modeling. One is the evidence that existing pilot projects providing precedent that U.S. adoption compels global basic incomes. All their modeling evidence is Alaska, Namibia, and India tried a UBI, but that should have triggered all the modeling stuff. Also disprove the entirety of First Advantage because they all stopped using it because it failed. Now, failed states are not an impact. Their threat comes R14. Weak states could be seen as classic mean intellectual fat, writing to government to floor attention without near peer committed Washington on a new calling burden being one of failed states. The threat posed by fragile states have turned out to be less certain than to get us to FP's index, not exactly Washington security party very few most geostrategic states with terrorism not correlated with the weak states and no impact or South Asia stable periods prove no crisis will escalate higher 20. There is stability based on empirical rocket lie and it throws 5 President India reacted with a caution offshore strictly limited and India territory for a few other states in the 20 weeks in and by via world and military response security and extra conflict calibrated in 2019 both were conscious and need to avoid escalation right for any from air strikes Pakistan moved to wrong now pointed directed a nuclear signal A-spec, the plan text should specify the federal bench that carries out the plan. They did not. That's key to agent kind of unstable link to trade-off in politics is outside. Okay. The absolute of economic security and service you don't feel sacrificing that cost endless sort of negative recognized drive. Megaron 13. Conquering drive is rooted in drone loss and pure iron conquer to discover start they cannot conquer Rwanda but come with insights to size to go to where to reenact constitute loss pressure primarily supplies an ally for and drone use special that company's bombing size and share drone use security loss so we can company probably know into war. Everybody's US lines of security is mythical attempts to bypass the experience of loss.
We'll send that out.
I'll wait for the psycho okay.
Nope, sending it. Okay, it's sent.
Good.
Yeah.
Status.
Status quo is always logical.
Okay. New taxation. Fiscal redistribution is taxes and transfers. So why is an increase in one not an increase in both?
Not our answer.
Yeah, our interpretation is that redistribution means that you tax to fund a transfer. It kind of adds like a sequencing portion. So like affirmatives must tax and then use the revenue
Okay,
from that
so
tax to
so
transfer.
does this imply that affirmative actions can happen in the future? So like should is not immediate now?
No, it's not like
Wait,
future,
okay,
it's
so-
like sequencing. Like
Well, okay, correct. Sequencing requires delay between.
Well, no.
Obviously, every plan text, if implemented in the real world, would take some non-instantaneous amount of time to happen.
Correct.
We think all the aspects of the plan are fiated simultaneously. We define fiscal redistribution as a process that includes both of those things.
yeah.
How do I tax a certain money and then use that same money for transferring without having done the tax in the first place? How do
You pass a
both
policy that
simultaneously?
taxes and transfers simultaneously.
What?
There might be some lag between the collection of the tax and the spending in the
Right.
transfer, but it's the same policy. It's passed automatically.
Well, yeah, but okay. Do we agree that enforcement is a part of fiat? So the enforcement of the plan would be sequenced and would have some delay. That's fine. Econ, why did COVID 08 cause extinction?
Yeah, the impact evidence, well, the impact evidence is obviously before COVID, but
Yeah,
the uniqueness
that's
evidence
it.
says recession now. We think the plan would be like a different kind of recession, be more prolonged. People would like leave their jobs for good. People only left their jobs for a little bit.
Why would
If you
people-
provide a basic income that is just a guarantee that you don't have to work, you can go pursue any of like your art projects you want, which are not productive jobs, and that destroys the economy.
So the only difference between the COVID recession and the recession that the plan causes is the unemployment.
A couple other things. One, past recessions are tempered and more short term. Doesn't trigger the impact as much
Okay,
as the
so-
structural problem in the economy. Two, they were mutual and global,
Okay.
whereas our impact is relative U.S. decline compared to adversaries.
Well, yeah, but the U.S. is interdependent with the allies. So if the U.S. goes down,
I don't think if Russia
adversaries-
declines, that necessarily means we decline. No.
If we decline, you don't think if we decline, Russia won't decline too either?
Not
Like
necessarily.
Russia's just gonna stay afloat even though all their like trade is gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Politics. Why didn't past shutdowns trigger?
What?
Why didn't past shutdowns trigger? Like the one in 2019.
Why didn't past shutdowns trigger the impact?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, our evidence says that we're entering a disease season in which the CDC must be the most capable they can be. It says that like if we don't pass the the continuing resolution,
Okay,
everyone will
explain
shut
to me how
down.
the-
CDC lacks capacity.
Okay.
This shutdown is different because it will be more prolonged.
Okay, so this shutdown, government shuts down. How does disease cause extinction?
Yeah, CDC can't respond to diseases that emerge in the U.S.
Okay, so why does that mean that islands like in the North Centennial get
Well, the CDC cooperates like internationally through the WHO.
No,
a few
there's
other
literally
international
no
organizations.
person who goes, who's not a North Centennial native, who goes to the North Centennial.
And they're not going to spread to other parts of the world.
Well, yeah, that's my point. They don't spread to other parts of the world, so it doesn't.
Ones that
None of
originate
your-
here do spread to other parts of the world.
Okay, Ken, grab it, starting now. Stop right. 908.
Sending it out. Let me know when you get it.
I have the doc, I'm good for the order.
Okay. The poverty advantage, the modeling advantage, T taxes, A-spec, the anarchism, okay, the econ disad, welfare trade-off, psycho, jury, and then the shutdown disad at the bottom. Good. Does anyone need to repeat? What is it? One, yes, inequality is what their evidence is what is certain, doesn't assume rising Gini coefficients. It's not the internal link is not diversity. War class extinction destroys the institutional capacity to respond to a host of existential crises, pandemics, populism, interstate conflict, that sort of similar. One is international all causes to it's inevitable, but the internal link to the scenario is building local resilience to make sure that the collapse of globalization broadly doesn't cause or impact. It also magnifies every institutional impact. There's no resolution to combating crises like climate change or emerging technology. The local resilience impact scenario prevents extinction from global anarchy and naval miscalculation, only building local results in the United States creates a cushion effect that can prevent escalation. That's the Jones evidence. Now, the modeling advantage 1:1 is how the pilot program's argument, but it doesn't matter because those pilot programs originally were not big enough for other countries to model off of 1 and 2. The failed state defense yes, recent impact instability draws in other major powers which cause escalation, causes hotspots, and cause extinction 1 and 3. No impact war as a whole doesn't assume the massive refugee crisis waves also assumes South Asia stability evidence in the soft power impact was also dropped. It's also extinction leadership in global multilateral institutions, self-effective response to disease, ecological collapse, cyber tax, and AI. The Brazil leadership in chemical compounds theory were dropped in college saves. Institution for Biodiversity, lost energy, shocks, moving water securities do not exist. That's a GS evidence. T. Taxes. 1. We made the plan to be financed by taxation. That's key leaf school distribution. Is disaggregated into taxation transfers. Most up-to-date comprehensive methodologies. That's just 17. The LA Storm is the service upper dispense statistical agency, the authoritative what is good for the commentary, framework text, transfer, other updates, data, and the redistribution, new frameworks, also change to the methodology, fiscal redistribution, of course, is not one piece, so I'm going to do most of the transfer and redistribution is one of our product, transfer to tax, the use of tax being replaced with the transfer and redistribution, redistribution with the transfer, taking taxes, the conscious remain flat, and for one's predictability, the reference simplifies life, intent to exclude seconds after ground, they stack the deck of paper of the by making agent counterparts and crossing counterparts with P3s on topic education because taxes only destroyed, no redistribution literature, and functional limits check, the K, anarchism. Only evaluate the desirability of the plan requires defending liquid needs its alternative solvency. 1 is class, 1 is C. Is construction to believe that the plan is a good idea. 2nd is fairness. 1 is C. The chance to generate offense. Only winged up exit of the plan affords to have a predictable win condition. And Fiat is good. That's what else 8. Conflict of serious at all levels, despite the diversity level, intensity, no matter whether it's interpersonal, international conflict, triangles, social refer to the mechanism of influence into security and attitudes, and perception, positive, negative, interdependence, to the escalation, gender, attitudes, relationship, and sovereignty is good governance is key to the development of solving the collective action crisis impacted by the most advantages and sovereign power does not cause global political violence. That's Brainstorm 8. Laws represented unipill and governments the unprecedented catastrophes winning us if not in the state of abstract would lead to over-evaluation of the problem and causes xenophobia and the laws not too far because of transmission because of laws of substitution and sense of power can be exercised in many ways and radically different from the Nazi regime and no subsidy governments are entrenched in one seat power feeding through its voting issue they can only feel after in the US government that's the best for comparative literature and fairness class or evidence is 5 lines of unwarranted drivel we get brand new evidence from 1 and the all fails as escalate 4. The states here to say that they call the beyond the concept of the distributional and ecological governance, expressing the states expect to consider the sustainability and compelling of the invention of the activities and environment given that it's not going to advance the emancipation and giving state power. Now the econ is that. Recessions are inevitable, inequality creates structural and economic weakness from the market collapse that's MFA and Joe the plan solves 1 is poverty basic income creates a safety net that stimulates economic activity studies prove it boosts GDP by only 2 trillion that's con 2nd is development it solves quality in the developing world preventing catastrophic collapse that's what gets to 1 3rd its consensus is light touch retribution that corrects market inefficiencies that's Matthew 19. Put that in the finance of basic income efficient way for the revenue where Europe and left for many years to be as easily implement the whole thing would work and always when attracted to the basic income takes the government now let the market do its thing correct the over effective estimates of economists and the measures oversee the filling using revenue to rebate and if it is got the large consent economists on the right and left and appears to disprove the link adopt the basic income in the 80s and empirical studies of pilot programs prove vulnerable to produce economic rates and prevents economic collapse that's carry 20. Effectively benefit the employees and business and entrepreneurs enjoy the reduction of flexibility you spend and the work in their jobs every year to put that back in the economy. Rich people signal money to mixes only rich small businesses collapse the whole economy but 70% more every business increased activity increased GDP and confidence is fake that's probably 18. Ignore the confidence hopefully as an indicator and the world growth to 2007 was negative growth to poverty and surprising confidence receives attention and no impact uniqueness that's 16. Governments are grappling with the flat line wages one young insecurity you have jobs with the industry without the origin actually transition governments with the cope with the unemployment industry consumer base and basic income inescapable we see chronic insecurity and there's no unknowable economics come out of favor the trade-off is that welfare trade-off. The elimination of duplicate program shields and link that's also said 19. Welfare 3 forms of non-contributing means tested programs for the BX and then to complement the party replace not to understand the full substitute and replace contribute to authority and drug insufficient and non-touch transfer over growing indigo programs that welfare defer and any access trade-off will be financed by programs that have AI solves better that's 19. Whatever programs that generate UBI, reducing the need for ETC, CTC, attentive side with disability, UI cuts transferred expenditures, tax increases, and taxes solved, implementation is phased in. The plan expands access to redundant programs for post-implementation. That's cuts are inevitable, controversial. That's Weaver 20. Cuts will happen in unpopular benefits and drive in the compromise the failure shortfalls that occur as shortfalls that occur as a benefit of the structural factors in the conflict with immigration and aging and no food wars. I don't know if this is stop. That's 18. Little merit in the reduction of the food increase in the conflict and the conflict requires people that means in starvation or opposition to resource violence and those sorts of discontent are more complex linked to the political structure and the corruption, democratic economic factors in the media sensitivity or research related explanation debates are more complex. Psycho K1 cross-play framework, secondly permutation to both psycho is wrong versus projects that's Robson 4. Structural majors, short circuit between that generalization specific into the schema is fixing these vanity extras and in projection of the explanation more public industry explanatory effects in the outcome from the audio formula theory is already as if to extend the actual for shadows and second is homogenizing that's ratio 13. Symbolisms of homogenizing and thinking about the practice monolithic and all pervasive order in the fix of people subject to being symbolic or the causes the impossible view and floating beats are bad as soon as the F makes it impossible debate for the one for the F and the jury's counterplan 1 permutation do both 2 do the counterplan 3 do the F and the counterplan over other counterplans will be technical compete by text and function counterplan proposed germane to subjectivity itself chaining counterplans only a clear and certain basic game solves property doubts the laying evidence in the one you see second is modeling the world CC and is confused that maybe that's it can bear 15. Putting gold placing iron in a world with the racial power and disparity in character of the outside working policymaker, one can hedge has been driven by the institution rendered without predictable, and the institution produces the produces the abrupt moves and the messiness can confuse sovereign observers. Now the fiat is key. One can see the link from politics and plan must be fiated. That never happens otherwise. That's Will Spirit 15. Challenge falls from the deep attention to propagandists, asserts the progressive and conservative agree the deep disagreement on principle, and actually forms an institution by ignoring the detailed classification among the different factions, and serious opposition which arise, and the progressives have to be sacrificed in trouble with the BI, and writing insists on abolition of and shines light on the deep tension inherited and the BI, and it tells negotiation the deep tension between the factions to re-emerge from the benches, and case solves net benefits. And permutation, counterplan noun, plan as followed, we can only fiat sequencing, not delay. This shutdown. One dumper style the Israeli normalization effort, opponents in the Farm Bill, future controversial legislation inevitable, no, votes reaching the answer 16. Best evidence of persuasion beyond the president controlled and can be without their stable factors affecting voting party ideology, constitution without the Senate, the president exercises the influence of Congress, and made up the mind, SCR is dead in the water as Spangeli 914. Launch impeachment inquiry shut down the government, the 30 federal government, the Republicans impeaching the merit of the full House and acts of impeachment and setting the war in a wild goose chase and fiat shield of length plan passes no debate perm, do both logical policymaker, do both the plan supposed to Harris, the rest of the mayors not Biden, that's 20. Mayor Tubbs has been talking about the UI in taking charge of the Tubbs and national coalition. Mayor's advocate for the federal cash policy and Biden could be not be framed by meanwhile Harris pushed for the basic income and pass shut down something internal link and burn it and geographic dispersion check disease as far as 17. Pandemics are really unlikely to cause HJ 833 and recording extinction than less than 40% in discrepancy infectious disease. In other words, will disperse and other factors contributed their own
Scratch bar card.
Conditionalities about our skills, straight turns, Scottish argument interactions, incentivizing chasing labor, breaking basic kills, Scottish to solve first with doing nuanced research, it opens up the possibility of strategic decision making on both sides. Go to the jury's counterpoint. No internal net benefit doesn't spill over, and the plan solves participatory governance by mobilizing the board.
Add on, if you're fine.
And the plan solves AI, that's Power 23 AI, exit central that line with humanity in it.
Actually, scratch that part. Food Wars, defense was set in the chain, and part of text for
It was in the
juries.
star.
What?
It was just deleted.
Oh, gotcha, okay. And part of text for juries was also set in the chain.
Okay, good.
Wait 1 second. I need to unzip.
Okay, I want to start on advantage one. Your answer to international all causes for inequality is that the plan develops resilience within domestic communities. How does that solve international inequality?
Well, I mean, first of all, we don't need to solve inequality worldwide.
Okay.
I think, yeah.
So all of your 1AC cards are about poverty broadly. They're not about poverty in the U.S.
No,
or about
they're about poverty in the U.S. because the U.S. is a global superpower, so institutional
The whole
response
point.
specifically is key. And we also have a whole modeling
What?
advantage about the
Okay, so solving the entire
collapse-
app is predicated on you winning modeling.
You misunderstand this theory. The whole point is that globalization's collapse is inevitable because of actors like Russia and China.
Okay, how does it implicate the affirmative solvent sphere for global
It's about by
poverty?
reducing inequality in the United States that builds local resilience that can allow for checking back against these issues.
How does local resilience solve poverty in across the globe?
You're misunderstanding what the Jones card
Okay,
says.
explain it to me.
The Jones card says that globally the economy is dead. Russia and East Asia will go rogue and just delete our supply chains, and the global economy will collapse. The plan makes the U.S. resilient because it stimulates demand and takes the bottom of the ladder up to the point where they can participate in the market, which means the U.S. doesn't collapse post. Global collapse.
So that explanation is predicated on your impact only being that U.S. collapse is bad.
Well, yes.
Okay, what is the impact of U.S. collapse?
There's a couple things.
We said civilizational collapse.
How does U.S. collapse cause global civilizational
We think that by
collapse?
building local resilience, that also cushions externalities outside of the U.S.
I want to go to the jury's counterpoint. This first certainty card is just talking about it generally. What's the impact if people don't know whether they'll get their checks?
No solvency at all. Our laying evidence is very good because it says that if it's not debt protected, then creditors.
Why is the counterpoint not debt protected?
Essentially, what?
Why is the counterpoint not debt protected?
Yeah, comes down to our fiat keepings. We think that if you don't fiat the plan, then you can't solve any of it.
If we win that the counterpoint results in a fiat of the plan, how does it not solve?
No, because it'll result in a watered down version that is industry backed. It's
okay,
good
so
for
this
creditors.
is predicated on the jury's deciding they want to water down the basic income, correct?
Well, not that they want to. It's just that the plan must be fiated for these debt protections.
Why must it be fiated?
The counter plan only fiats a recommendation of the basic income.
Wait.
The counterplan delegates.
So the counterplan can't fiat the
I'll explain it. The counterplan delegates the decision to provide a basic income to a citizen
Does not
jury.
fiat the plan, therefore it cannot solve debt protections.
Why?
Because it results in a watered down version. It's
Okay,
not
so
debt
watered down. It's predicated on that.
Let's go to the welfare trade-off just
Yeah.
This first Alston
Yeah.
card.
Alston.
Why did like the elimination of duplicate program shield the link?
Yeah, so essentially, we don't think that it would trade off with the disset scenario because they're duplicative programs, things that a basic income solves better. Unemployment checks, SNAP.
How does the basic
food
income
stamps.
provide Medicaid funding that would
Well, I
probably
mean,
rule
so
hospitals?
the point is that it doesn't cut off from Medicaid funding. It cuts off from SNAP.
There's
Because
no-
SNAP is just basically like you get money, but this is only for food.
There's
Basic
no
income is just
impact
you
is
get
about
money,
Medicaid,
no strings
okay.
attached. What?
There's no reason to trade
10
off.
starting now.
Okay.
442.
440 left.
2.
Yeah. Sending that right now. Okay. Order is econ disad, modeling advantage, safety net disad, psycho K.
Hold on. Econ modeling, safety net, psycho.
Politics, anarchist K.
I'm good.
Oh wait, I need the order.
Econ, modeling advantage.
Modeling advantage.
Yeah, safety net, psycho, politics, anarchist.
Give me 1 sec.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I'm getting off for some reason.
Everybody good? Yeah. We can see. Kick the econ attack and see recessions are inevitable, but they're global, they can't solve. That's the Jones evidence for incident for reference modeling advantage. You can see that India, Namibia, Alaska, and the US have already tried basic incomes and they did nothing. Takes out the spillover arguments. If you net this, I can see no food wars, no offense there. Psycho, kick it, persistent competition, reject the argument of the team. CR this, I can see numbers and defense, no offense. For them, condo here, we get what we did in N2 and counterplans, keeping planks one night flex, topics massive, and includes healthcare, which is its own topic. Ask me tax or transfer, screen distance, and every app is built to link turn econ, try or die for multiple options, test the app for multiple angles, especially when apps stand back the best offense, still to a C2 arbitrariness. The app can always find a marginally more debatable interpretation, which lays the every debate, punishment, fit the crime. Just make the counterplans whatever they're in. Actually, they didn't even have an interp defense, 1 DMU, adding more advocacy, peaks, and values until the strategic liabilities, 2 and contradiction inevitable, T disad speed, highlighting framework hits. Anarchist. The winning investment failed system of nation state sovereignty built on exploitation of violence. Affirming the plan is a policy of state answers to state questions, which cheats our agency to a state form that's already driving humanity to extinction through resource consumption, inequality, fascism, and war. That's the hallway evidence. Is triad is all the state by any means because the state form guarantees extinction is unsustainable. Locked into policy failures to risk nuke war and extinction. The only question of what kind of political order we create instead. Fall 20 states coming to an end. Changes to status climate levels of power will elude state control, climate change, and nuclear weaponry not be met responsible manner. Failure to produce catastrophic consequences of the human species. Absence of mechanism for holding global human interests led to policy failure. Citizens withdrawing from support for central governments in favor of local participation, polarization, challenges capacity. See this world order is always a fiction. Future might emerge. Many post failing possibilities. Global nuclear war is 100% inevitable in the short or long run. Failure of math is mathematically guaranteed. Global disarm alone solves Journal 22. Unwise to assume we have decades to find a solution, barring any major change. Nuclear wars on the way. States fail to prioritize the West. Made great efforts to win this, but did not make the peace. NATO push towards Russia. Putin is always taking a blow towards arms controls to grow. Must end disaster, nuclear war, any of it with non-zero probability of a finite period inevitable given long enough to avoid breakdown. Each have to operate without a single slip up for the rest of history. We would have to foresee every contingency. Absent nuclear war is luck. Disarm will be feasible. States are not the priority for sovereignty. The state is too burdensome to sustain. Pollard 15 for 1,000 millennia. Our planet offered as diversity. Political system states are unsustainable. Require complex system bureaucracy. Continuous expansion to acquire resources. States will collapse. Despots require a state. They need weapons. The 2AC drops climate. Citizen ensures over extraction to fund governments and militaries. That causes ecological collapse and extinction and means there are material limits to the state's existence, which takes out out state good offense and also turns deforestation. This is clearly in the 1C and the 2C job security don't have any impact way against the gay cooperation will be answered by the alternative. Deterrence failure means that there are no relations or successful international cooperation. Ignore mere decades of peace. All of history proves that war is inevitable. Goes nuclear and U.S. coercion backfires. Bears 18 decades of peace have not been rare. Each time the next war involves weapons available at the time. Only way to make sure nukes are not used, make sure there are no weapons. More likely we have been spared, not because of deterrence, but despite it is not legit to argue nukes deterred any sort of war. Scientists examine 348 disputes to see whether nuclear states were more successful in coercing adversaries of anything. Such countries with less successful psychology and kind of first vulnerability guarantee deterrence failure. Bears 18 deterrence requires second strike. Nukes have become accurate, raising concerns about kind of first vulnerability. Increase the likelihood of first strike with increasing dangers of victims. Might preempt resulting in situations dangerously unstable. Deterrence assumes optimum rationality. Everything known about psychology suggests this absurd numerous reasons. Bears 18 many paths to failure. Both from the blue substantial wasteful convention war accident, unauthorized rational use, false alarm spoken, arrow accidents, geese, rupture pipeline, or faulty. Code's been interpreted as a launch framework. Evaluate the 1C's relationship to the state prior to its material consequences. 1. Cast your ballot as a critical analyst. Your task to unsettle the structures we used to, like the 1C's embrace of the state. The state is a social relation that can be destroyed by relating differently. Chris Nablus 22. We might be used to such to reproduce it as everyone's power to produce different ones. The hegemonic agency understood only effective to liberate a single agent. Only when dominant agents can be convinced the state is a social relationship, it can be destroyed with new relations. Alternative agency practice. We realize new micro-context movements organized better than the state. Example, abound for Earth First, IWWs, for example, formal organization, reproduce dominant agency, international order free from dominance cannot be achieved through states as prefigured by those actors whose aims embody their new methods to call for citizens to give up any expectation states sort things out. Organized from the ground up. 2. We mean policy relevance, just policy relevance for people instead of states, which is far more salient. Chris Nablus 22. Negro pacifism address every citizen rather than the states. Policy recommendation to communities who resist oppression, resist from participating in questions of structures build. It calls us to build upon a better world. The ground up. Address it only to students for IR, but human communities for all of us. Do what we can to refashion local to global political communities. 3. Fill in the alternatives of process counterplans contrived. T. In terms of infinite agent counterplans, which links harder to both teams. Offense. 4. Neg flex. The racist status dead. Ask and avoid taxation. Spiking dissatisfied grounds and no limiting T. In terms of stable generic critical. Actually scratch. Ask and avoid taxation. 5. No offense. State good bad is highly predictable. As favor because of perms and first and last speech. Fairness is not by structural disadvantages like speed and camp. There's no evidence of clashing makes us better critical thinkers than our enter solves because we only get case about the state. Woodhouse says nothing. But our model is better because it prescribes local questioning and compassion rather than aggression. Sovereignty is not good. Group with the career evidence. Limited modest use of the state is a non-starter. They locate progressive potential and the ability for people to be free from poverty itself within the authoritarian bounds of the state. That's hallway. The plan stifles cooperative independence and weaponized livelihood to preserve status power. Middle of 97 to the left has led to growth of state autonomy and achieve no more than bureaucrat plan than the market welfare is the preserve the state will be used as social control, handing over the welfare, undermine social capacity, the mythology, dependence, cooperation, soft welfare, linked to empowerment, the need for democratic alternative welfare state is never more urgent. State welfare is incompatible with the alt. Their modest use covertly bolsters the state's court's potential. The alt alone solves middle 97. The state is incompatible with welfare. No amount of state welfare is going to alleviate the problems of disparities and environment, state welfare, social control. Although seductive, counterproductive, increasing dependency, issues can be resolved at a localized level. Economies as well. Local by the population, mutual aid would provide assistance. All members have equal access, cooperation, and tools of reason. Increase separation technology away from ordinary people in the hands of the elite, using for control. Development is weaponized for international violence. As 1C Wong answered for reference, proves that it does cause violence, which was also answered in the overview. Yes, solvency, group with the all fails argument. It operates on 2 levels. 1, globally, movements abound from the Zapatistas to councils and Kurdistan, a world in which states are dissolved by because the litany of environmental, political risk from war and climate change. That's hallway. We don't directly fiat the dissolution of the state, which means that we don't link to their fiat unfair argument, but rather we organize collective movements that are able to challenge the confines of the state in the first place. The alt is pro-market but anti-state. States create the conditions for runaway accumulation that makes capitalism unsustainable and self-defeating. Autonomous organizing leverages Marxist evolution tools discovery and uses decentralized innovation, which solves better. Miss left 20. There's a significant difference between Marxist capitalism, argues against economic planning, also cut against runaway accumulation. Runaway accumulation and capitalism is considered by state innovation. Markets not necessarily creating inequality. Wealthy egalitarian society can achieve less environmentally impactful economic activity. Discounting of scale emerges out of difficulties. Communication between individuals, centralized radios, creative processing bottleneck. Many people in decision will never be fully able to capture what's going on. There's cooperative, more efficient, adopting such approaches indirect. Tension with runaway accumulation, centralized approach to production better. Integrate new discoveries, environmental shifts is why anarchists favor new artisanal tools. Economy built upon decentralized production can add more than a centralized model. Flexibility, offer tech, offer runaway even harder. Reason by the markets where work evolution is clearer than your decentralization means that society can better react to changes, avoid danger exploit opportunities. Centralized regimes cannot fully unleash innovation. Sharing resources becomes national because state like entity can guarantee returns difficult to impose. Mark that card at difficult to impose. 2, it operates individually. The ballot can affirm autonomous collective organizing. Refusing the answers offered by the state leaves us the politics question about what world we want to create. The simple shift from what should the state do to how should we organize to solve problems ourselves actively creates a different world. Try to die because state collapse is inevitable. It's Holloway. The belief that only states can scale up the response to global crisis, the root cause of governing failure. Solutions requires mass engagement, which deferral of agency to institutions forecloses. Barrington Bush 15. What actions to the global crisis? Most answers to the problem is the big solutions must be to expectation and coordination scale must be losing institution the rise of core criticism. Government working against itself. Changes around the world need to evolve beyond representation towards politics of action. People aren't invested in any solution. Is unsustainable. Mark that card at unsustainable. The international cooperation good arguments only the all solves cooperation. Stated strategies guarantee war by deferring responsibility and hyping up nationalists. Christianopoulos 22 state absolves responsibility. Agents rationalize the decisions of their citizens. Shift away from responsibility. Politicians. Politics from the bottom up means that every citizen bears violence, become inflicted, varying nationalist terms offer demagogues to conjure up a nationalist hype of facilitates war power relations to be transformed. Other ways of structuring international politics are feasible. Standing order which human beings make of a global society resembles anarchist networks. Canada the ontological empire for all groups. Interaction is political life. We focus on Australian state discourse of thinking because public perception is dominated by the assumption states with the agency imagining considered international order can operate as constrained. State as cooperation fails. Number 14 scholars found that instead of global problem solving, we've seen suddenly few instances of cooperation. Emerging powers oppose the ground rules from the Western liberal order, seeks to transform multilateral arrangements and shy away from global responsibilities. This implicates every single portion of the AFID. Explains why Namibia, Alaska, India, and even the US have experimented with the BI, but it's never been modeled and it never will be. Also, I'm not super confident they didn't read an interp on condos, so I'm going to go back. Dispose, bad. 1, definitional consensus, there is none. 2, force, perms, process, counterplanes, world peace, banks, check. 3, can't solve like 2, this gets supply. 4, research inevitable. Infiltration, best argument, the 2C will always make it. 5, condos versus creativity. 6, dispo, 2 and C, counterplanes evade their offense. Uncondos bad. 8, multiplies all of our offense, makes it impossible to go for any other argument than 2 NAR if the 1C introduces an adversary. I'm good.
What does the alt do?
Organizes autonomous collectives to resist the state.
Okay, what are autonomous collectives?
Well, I mean, I can't name any that the alt would create, but I can name their inspirations. Things like the Zapatistas, things like Kurdish councilism. We think that local communities organizing for their own good is better than the state.
Why is state collapse inevitable?
A bunch of reasons. Deterrence failure is inevitable. Cooperation inevitably breaks down. We think the state is too bureaucratic and kind of burdensome to sustain itself. We think the networks that the state creates in order to sustain itself become increasingly complex, such that they can never be managed successfully.
Okay, this impact one at the top, what are they? Is it just nuclear war, climate, what else?
Well, I mean, yeah, climate was dropped into AC, yes, but nuclear war as well.
Okay, nuclear war, climate. Does the critique say anything about growth?
Yeah, I mean, the critique enables good growth.
Okay, what is good growth?
Growth free from the authoritarian state. Your evidence says that your evidence, well, I'll draw a distinction. Your evidence says that your growth would be used to further the geopolitical power of powerful countries. Our growth would be used for the benefit of people. It would involve local markets, people trading among themselves.
Okay, we've made modeling arguments about how it would improve the quality of life.
No. Your Wong evidence says that it would improve the quality of life. Well, it's tagged to say that. Your Wong evidence actually says in the unhighlighted portion.
The highlight you did was about it's correlated. People with high development indicators generally are correlated. With
no, it's not correlation. It's very explicit.
Okay, I still don't understand the distinction you're trying to make. Basic income.
Alternative means no states. Growth does not contribute to state military power. Your growth does do that. That is bad.
Okay. So you said the alt creates a different political order. What is that?
One that's based around localities, small organizations.
Locality. Okay. What do these small organizations do within debate?
Within debate, I mean, they debate, I guess.
Debate about what?
The topic.
The topic. Okay. So I just don't understand. How does your model debate? How is it different from ours?
Well, I mean, we think that you should center the app's relationship to the state prior to
the state. What is that?
The way that you view the state, the way that you present the state as being good for solving existential risks.
How do you?
I don't think that's vague at all.
Okay, so under the alternative, how would we view the state?
Well, I mean, the way you view the state is as the saver of humanity and the provider of liberation and money to people who otherwise wouldn't have it. We think that's a terrible way of looking at the state.
What is modest use?
Well, it's what your card said. It said modest use of the state is good, or a modest use of the state. That's cap. It's not true. You give, you shackle people with the state.
We'll take the last couple sentences.
Prep right now. Yes. Great, bro. Just yelled.
Relative growth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Stop right. 20 seconds.
Okay, one on our side. it's T taxes, then the jury's kind of. Okay. Everyone good?
We're good.
Topic apps must include both taxation and spending that's pertinent to they do not mandate tax. Two impacts. One is limits certificate and transfer only have job security for any type of worker, basic incomes for everyone, and 1,000 minute minute social security expansion like privatization, innovative for like healthcare or disability enrollment for any demographic but not currently included like immigrants or young people. Plus the app can clarify tons of funding streams like immaterial deficit spending, creating an untenable practical only foreseeing and linkage between tax and spending solves. Two is ground most of opposition would be based on the economic cost of taxes and political costs of targeting high earners. The app does not meet all the one is the plan would not leverage taxes. One is the evidence of the benefit of the basic income is that it is not tax if they are tax plan from its nativism and all right aggression that causes terrorism and proximity. High spending is only possible taxation redistribution and permanent nativism and aggression towards Muslim regarded resulting in horrific terrorism and relation related by single parties of danger of strong costing lives taken to single in Europe and legal racism is exacerbated we find our published trading research expanding social safety spending is further new sentiments of branding and was immigration tunes the globe bears 19 nuke terrorist smartphones go nuclear weapons strike terror strong the region is the ways common asking nuclear chain reaction and state nuclear comments going to do that and all nuclear planet nuclear state would tune the entire species mark card add species the counter-tradition one it links to our office most lit off and transfer mechanism avoids the controversy economic consequence of reducing taxes to this key diagram. Two it's a precision disaster allowing the app to be either tax or transfer makes no sense because the resolution requires one of three mechanisms all of which are transferred there that cannot guide over the year debate because it not fit the resolution's construction. Three is resolution meaning increases or redistribution by a JG or BI implies there are some JGs or BI that are not fiscal redistribution. The predictable stuff is wrong. One limits her to too many apps means you cannot think of all of them. Two or more predictable. A's position only evaluates a process of our holistically and intended to distinguish FRL does both the primary distribution income by changing tax policy and the secondary distribution which accounts for transfers. B is plain meaning redistribution notes allocating the current distribution manual website note 8 towards the distribution reallocated the two spread the other is that always go to 12 ordering ratings of the rule interpretation of constitutional states and primitive interpreters cannot define hidden meanings and functional of the Afghan argument is wrong. Our term solves it. The absolute linkage key word like carbon dividends or bad tax never lose the tax because the 2C war for Afghan is that we make agents and process governments compete that's incoherent requiring taxes not make these compete. No new 1 hour Afghan or warrants protected for sandbagging. Topic education was a blip in the 2C without a warrant about the 1 hour reading card for any clipping argument. 2C only said functional limits check. I would love to know what they are. No new 1 hour extrapolation just by sandbagging. All arguments is a claim without a warrant rejected. Juries. The government solves a case against binding authorities and policy on basic income to randomly select the citizen to oversight juries include deliberate bodies the judge implement and the raw policy basic income aerodynamic decision will work out the details over time which resolves deficit the government creates political waste and causes federal fall are in Ireland 12. 21. Why do most political capital the 2 CJs instead of improving legislative purposes dental GAs can defend range of PC available pursuing other compromising enforcement strategies include ongoing work by prosecutors and money public surveying legislative bottom legitimacy for solve reform turned to both spells it has to include the plans to federal fiscal policy otherwise severance is voting issue means a legal question the plans protection is decided in advance and most juries decide questions the fact that status quo jury trials economy gives juries the final say in each instance of distribution that's key to robustly empower public participation demonstrate effective model governance and social back evidence involving juries only after the legal question been decided fails. Wait for 15. CDs would initialize participatory during conduct however short-term amount. CDs made short-term consultation to give the appearance of delicacy decision already made behind closed doors. Mark the card outdoors. Perm do the accountment and severs. One is fiscal redistribution requires Congress or Greenhill 23. Implementation of fiscal policy requires legislative action. Central banks suggest rates days or fiscal policy change requires a time for legislation implementation. Preferred A predictably has it defined and excluded derivative of governmental understanding of fiscal policy. B is limits on Congress staff loads on already a huge topic and logging infinite executive process court presidency is ground anything else boots or restricting general election decided because they conserve political to show the resolution is specific that must be the federal government doing the increase for Article 20. So a citizen will be a thought of special relations to noun verbs. Answer the question, what does this already do? The common power citizen juries the ownership of the policy and the final say it's not the federal government doing the redistribution. That was the explanation of other issues. Perm fails because it doesn't solve any of the countermeasure. One looks like perm to both. They'll get some authority citizen juries also retaining a federal authority over the central issue of inequality crossed by all the deficits above. Two and empowered citizen juries conduct oversight through specific decision is key. Back 22. Institution of a corporate lease for older people can set vision and capture more most effectively given a task of permanent mind never citizens oversight, sustainable organization, or capture radical shifts in power to gain major emerge not from a dramatic refashioning of ourselves, about cumulative effect of small institutions. Solvency, the economy is way better for certainty than the plan. One is capture randomly selected citizens or immune to political influence and capture by wealthy industries, which makes policy subject to reversing and arbitrary force patterns. Most firms are not deep-pocketed by off-regulated to the economy is overwhelmingly more predictable, beneficial for the vast minority, a majority of regulated industries. That's Schultz in the back end. The two is signaling and ID. When we draw on a broader activity, we get about our liberty state rights, key to policy and understanding changing so public conservative can be a resilient market card, resilient the economy solves democracy, which solves a bunch of accidental threats. The only two easy answers are two. First, the applicants can't solve the eternal, deliberative democracy solved as above. Yes, spillover. That was above. The plan allows for these deliberative bodies to be used in the future. The lay permanent is legit. One is intrinsic as sequencing found in either plan or the kind on the next count. Two, seven should meet. Shall 17. In order to how many showed its expediency pervert the lay spikes this out of kills limits by allowing apps in the future.
Okay. 8:40. We're up. Starting now. Stop right. 51. Setting it up. Okay. Order. Advantage 1. I'll take a little bit rough. Stop round. 127. Okay. Advantage 1. Advantage 2. Econ DA. Jury's Canapan.
Hold on. Yeah, so
And then.
you can tell us.
Advantage 1. Advantage 2. Econ DA. Jury's Canapan. T tax, or wait, jury's Canapan, yeah, T taxation. Then the critique. Did I get the stand? Good.
Plans also embody civilization collapse, pandemics, populist emerging tech, interesting conflict, and also that existential crises. Advantage 2, yes, modeling past teams were too small to model. For other countries to follow on or drop that on the lower scale. The national program solves troublability, impacts within software, Indian software. The failed states drop development checks every conflict, which solves the K out the econ. This is an offense, the whole point is that globalization will collapse inevitably, so try to develop resilience in the US. The US doesn't collapse themselves. Israeli drone sales and missile sales, which solves extinction now. The Canada, the juries can also the case fiat is key. The Canada only recommends the plan. No one is says the plan gets implemented because it's unpopular and the devil's in the details. Also, the political fire trauma because we can see the legal politics. So the juries Canada result would determine that the plan should not be implemented. Certainty is also key. The Canada is not it's uncertain if that precedent novel uses to the juries. As per the 108 on no spillover, which makes it a normal process. One, that protection is absolutely clear. And if you have a normal protection, they can also creditors with moral contacts with debtors and make people unsure about their right with the plan sees money, no solvency to modeling the Canada. And it comes out of left field by having a random set of people off street make economic decisions for the country that confuses India and Brazil prevents modeling from kick Canada do the plan Canada over other issues. It's also nothing about the plans Canada parts of occurring with the plan is key to then benefit each of the other issues is specific. It's about either debt protections, basic incomes, or fiscal redistribution. Canada must be by a tax function. One after other interpretation laws. And then for the cheap shot, no normal means fix, etc. Two, the germane is internal benefits with the rate for the proper financial the dodge flashing with the money, C block, recycle, etc. And the topics next advice together block, literature, controversy, and is generally neglecting top wording, basically opposite things towards Canada to be the economics, university link every F, and this is Canada leads everything that enters the K framework that affects offense, now T taxation. We meet the one in our options with the planar vacuum. Best to prevent our arbitrariness, we meet function two. By basically coming to taxation for revenue raising, it's not deficit spending or solvency evidence, explicit that the fiscally neutral, and then capabilities that require the tax reform and can be financed purely by printing money. That's clearly evidence. The one in our native court also defines what it means to be the taxation. This is all over the money. C cost will be offset by tax revenue. That's a talk in Greenhill. No one compares the plains by all Indian and Brazilian soft power who check those conflicts. Repeatedly denied by every tax in history. Terrorism does not constitution 116. No, so all this about the example to different influence. The government this in our life. Majority are incorporating the best way. Let's short term genius, smart card, genius now, the ready new impact, which means we'll read add-ons, AI, add-on powers 23 AI, it's just the humanity, there's actually our AI, electricity, climate change, we have a result of the housing using efficiency without, make sure that your humanity will not be developed by corporations, if there's a solution to recognition and message to the emergency, future, it's not UBA, there's no option, civilized growth rate, extinction, multi-19, the same consumption of the species growth, negative lapse of birth rates are declining, we've had negative problem information on the life supporting Earth, now the critique overview, deterrence words, brains 18, let's looking at your let's use the Americans and dirty budget privacy, I don't know, Europe, Asia, Asia, Russia, so I don't know, let's be hard back on the ready, I don't know, stable value ready, legal provision, cancer, something, military, predator, no, it's but provides substantial overmatch, no overmatch, no climate impact, the 20 rent impact, until we responded to here, basic income solves, Malton, 19, unit representation, nationalization, energy, result property, security, agency, stop, reconstruction, and new society, you be able to repart the SN impact, we consume less, we will able to property, nobody will that you weren't possible to be able to be allowed to move on from a simple idea now, state is not unsustainable, the brain's evidence proves that the US is leading in hard power lances, their evidence is generally colloquial and doesn't assume US military power, which lacks no policy fear, that status quo distributed, the plan falls, which is on the advantage one, Randall is wrong plan, falls their office because it makes it discreet and unsustainable, other actors who proliferate state is not true, but it's more complexity, bureaucracy, is all the status quo, BSOs, from moving away from welfare state and cutting duplicative programs which solves sustainability, the alternative also cannot solve any of these, state is sustainable, our Barash is wrong, no, the US goes over Croatia because we are isolated and we will be locally resilient, that's where advantage one, state is sustainable, 123, we are all about the end of the national US, not buying, no, that's just making the state less secure, but not feeling to my powers, but together defeat them nationalism, global nations, let's sacrifice to repel, now framework, what we feel members unique things, compatible alternatives, one fairness, equals, defensive different representations, attached to our speech locks, executor, etc. How ways it comes logically part of every argument, whether dependent on it, otherwise would offer the all true clash resolution, burdency of the just plan thing with that words not predictable, the requirements clash analysis, robustly defended positions that create better advocates, transfer offense, development, recruit, critical analysis, debate is in shapes of activity, all causes like transfer, economic, social background, society, method, all the way, loss or internalized technical fears, the next argument, that we don't exclude the K, we just raise the bar, so and also solvency, which is better, as for class offense, and then it reflects on the other creation, and concede, they get condo, which solves that, state, good, bad is predictable, but not good for frame of interpretation. Unfairness is inevitable, is not reason to make debate more unfair. Only in the case of the state is also arbitrary, which links to our clash offense. Now the alternative cannot solve Indian modeling because it doesn't do a basic income, and it's only domestic within the US, so India and Brazil doesn't adopt a basic income. It also failed the divorce 16. The White House is going to consider a better one. There is American never recognized opposition against the state, given all many Bolsheviks. So that's the Africans, not clash offense, this is 1952, where attack, the Louis Piazza, now the revolutions were zero, the Symphony of Others, they have political action, none of the Americans in area fantasy and freedom, what we should begin violence in the form of making the revolution to a political end. State is sustainable, it's also
Read the last part.
Yeah, Walt, please.
I'll wait.
No, under the other Walt. Or Walt 23.
Walt is everywhere.
Yeah. Okay, it's sent.
Walton brands. We'll get it started.
Okay, 443.
Okay. Order is Anarchy K, Modeling Advantage, Econ Advantage. Actually, Anarchy K, Juries, Modeling Advantage, Econ Advantage.
Anarchy, juries, second advantage, first one. Modeling advantage, property advantage.
Then I guess Econ would be at the very end.
It would.
Econ would be at the very end.
So, just one more time.
Sorry. Anarchy, juries, modeling, poverty, econ.
Is there a dot?
No. That is stand.
Oh yeah.
Everybody good? It is a very easy neg ballot. The only frame you need to apply in this debate is try or die. You know that there's no such thing as an app ballot that does not result in the immediate extinction of the entire human race. They conceded a couple of impacts coming out of the 2AC, which I'll hang my hat on here. First is climate. The Holloway evidence is really good. It was explicitly tagged and highlighted in the 1 and C to say that governments facilitate military expansion by always overexpanding into the domain of climate. They need to constantly expand to fund their overaccumulating markets, and ever imperialistic military drives to overaccumulate. That results in extinction. They read the impact evidence for us in the launching list course in the 1AC, but they've conceded that impact is inevitable. They also, and 2, deterrence failure. This is where we're going to win this debate. They conceded too many arguments on why deterrence failure is inevitable. For you to vote on nuke war is not inevitable in the 1A, in the status quo. Any solvency of the alternative, any possibility of solvency means you automatically vote negative because it is truly try or die, in the sense that every single scenario in which you do not embrace the alternative results in assured destruction of the entire human race. The climate the climate BI card in the 1AR, it was new, you should throw it out. Climate was clearly present in the 1 and C. They should not get new 1AR answers. We'll concede that fairness is an important thing to consider from the framework debate. Means that block decisions rely on 2AC mistakes. I wouldn't have extended this K if they hadn't dropped the terminal freaking impact to it, so they don't get new answers to it. But the card also says that it takes too long to solve climate change. It says you need to think about it over the very, very long term, to the extent that the BI would be able to get people to transition away from fossil fuels to green energy, which obviously takes a long time. Holloway says that we're approaching tipping points now, and that the break for climate change is already happening in the status quo. Means you have to embrace the alternative before it's too late. It's also wrong. They dropped that militaries will continue over extracting even if people move away from fossil fuels. The only warrant was not fossil fuels or emissions, but also biodiversity and over extraction. They conceded the militaries will always do so, both in their campaigns of expansion, waging war on other countries, dropping bombs on biodiversity, and in their actual extraction of things like rare earth minerals, which are needed to fund their never-ending war machines. Deterrence works. Arguments that I'll extend the stuff that they conceded in the 1AR first is you should ignore decades of peace. The bearish evidence is really good. It says the decades of peace are not rare, from the point of people living in nations that seem to be hegemonic now. Those decades of peace are always broken. However, they're always fought at the end of that period of peace with the weapons that are available at the time. Means that the period of peace that we're in right now will inevitably break when we fought with nuclear weapons, with both sides agree caused extinction. They also conceded psychology and counterforce vulnerability. All nations are inherently insecure about the state of their second strike capabilities. Any perceived threat to those second strike capabilities will cause immediate nuclear escalation because they feel that they've been backed into a corner that turns the logic of deterrence on its head, which means they can't go for deterrence solves all nuclear war ever, because deterrence breaks down when countries feel like they literally have no other choice but to nuke the aggressor coming after them. They also conceded the third piece of bearish evidence, which says that black swans always make people feel like deterrence is breaking down. There are all types of things. They can make people think that nuclear war is happening. Glares off lenses, computer misreadings, fog in the atmosphere, all might trigger nuclear sensors readings of a potential nuclear conflict, causing all-out escalation because they feel that they have nothing else to lose. The 1AR cards on this are so bad I really don't have to say much. Both Walt and Brands are about hegemony and the United States being able to attain its military, being able to extend its military advantage over adversaries in the long term. But they've dropped every piece of offense that says that extension of military capabilities doesn't matter. We'll concede that you get to weigh the AF against the impact of the K. Try or die means that you have no offense. They also conceded that state collapse is inevitable in and of itself, as the Pollard evidence to state, is too burdensome to sustain. Bureaucratic networks become increasingly complex and impossible to manage for leaders. That means they literally cannot go for state good offense of the 2AR because the state will not exist after a long enough time. But you have to vote neg to see what order will fill in after the state, after it's already collapsed. The alternative does solve the 1AR superoblivion, and they dropped a couple of arguments. One, try or die, obviously extended from the top. Any trillionth of percent chance the alternative solves means you vote neg. But two, the alternative is not just domestic. This was clear in the block and conceded in the 1AR. Will concede framework their framework in terms solves fairness means no new 2AR framework gripes with our alternative. We draw inspiration from the Zapatistas and Kurdish Catholicism, both of which operate internationally and cause people to challenge the state, resulting in at least a small chance that we're able to overthrow it and live to see another day. The permutation extended on framework. The new permutation on framework is wrong. Both pieces of Millet evidence were conceded. The permutation demands that activists against the state develop split vision towards the state, i.e., they are both against the state but also completely reliant on the state for the provision of the BI, which means that they're never going to be able to effectively combat the state. The alternative solves their impacts better. So presumption flips neg the can't solve spillover argument. No, that's wrong. They conceded the Miroslav evidence. The alternative opens up local small markets, which increase local resiliency as per the 1AC, means that it solves inequality and the breakdown of institutional capacity as a result of inequality, but it also provides public goods, which is the cornerstone of global well-being as per their evidence, but it avoids that well-being being tailored to the geopolitical ambitions of states. The state cooperation bad stuff, they conceded that it absolves responsibility for individual actors. It means it never works.
Okay. 151. Prep. Starting now.
Modeling advantage, and it'll just be on the modeling advantage in the K.
We're going for external impacts of the decay that the alternative can never resolve, which means that it is very easy to vote affirmative. The plan solve models enables other countries to participate in multilateral forums because it shores up development indicators and establishes the basic income in other countries. That enables the collective capacity of society in other countries in failed states in Yemen, Brazil, and India to work together to cap existential scenarios. Everything: nuclear war, pandemic, cyber attacks, AI, existential protectionism, and resource shortage. It encompasses and outweighs everything on decay. Now, there's a couple of key internal link scenarios that implicate decay. First is AI. They drop the add-on and cost extinction. Basic income enables protections that solve rapidly accelerating AI that threatens the collapse of humanity. Good AI is coming out now and it solves a bunch of threats like pandemic, cyber attacks, all of the above. But bad AI causes extinction via the orthogonality principle. That's a wilder evidence. Only the plan can solve that through a basic income. Secondly is the Indian soft power extending to solve cyber and pandemic. Cyber in the response to pandemics are both external to the decay, because remember, the decay deteriorates the institutions that can respond to these to these existential threats by other states. Only the plan can solve by enabling these countries multilateral institutions. The plan also solves climate. They dropped all the tune-out warrants are impossible to achieve absent the app, because people will never move away from fossil fuels. They'll never move away from working in oil or extraction companies, because they are forced to right now, because they have no other out. Only basic income and implement in reducing inequality and shoring up development indicators is a prerequisite, which means that we solve climate change better than the alternative. Winning the development scenario also takes everything else they've dropped, that it solves all existential wars and makes states less likely to go to war with each other when states have a high level of development indicator and capacity. Now go to the critique, the impact. We're going for the impact toward they've mishandled that the plan solves climate. Greenhill says that when people mobilize and collectivize together because of a basic income and shoring up development indicators, that enables the state uniquely to solve climate-related disasters. This is not new. The 2 read an impact turned into 1 year. We read a new fucking terrorism. They said even if militaries go rogue and do fossil fuels globally, the plan prevents consumption to some extent, which our PhD evidence says in the 1 year are sufficient to check back against existential climate. At worst, that makes climate massively long-term, which makes it irrelevant. And intervening actors solves their impacts better. It's now deterrence works. Global nuclear war is fundamentally not possible in a world of global U.S. hegemony. Hard power dominance ensures alliance credibility, which ensures checks on nuclear power like China, Iran, North Korea, Russia, which is the only possible way to U.S. overmatch. They have dropped the second line in the Brand's evidence, which says that if states in the U.S. were to collapse, that would cause mass catastrophe and global war. Absent global assurances, rivals are emboldened and tensions are escalated due to a lack of credible deterrence. This functions as a disadvantage to the alternative in a check against solving all of global war, but rather cause extinction. Striking strikes is long. It would be developed secretly. Black swans are empirically denied. There have been historical checks that were developed in the Cold War. It's not about normal people perceiving these threats, because obviously people don't have access to our NC3 system. The state is not sustainable. There's a million factors in the status quo that their evidence just doesn't assume. The cards are generally about historical, empirical examples when empires collapse, and doesn't assume the status quo, military revolution, the geopolitical order. Any revolution that occurs in the U.S. would be crushed by the military, which means that there is no permissible way to overthrow the country. The U.S. state and the hegemony is generally sustainable. Firstly, is military dominance. U.S. military spending accounts for 45% of global defense spending and sustains the largest amount of forward deployed forces across Europe, the Middle East, Japan, and South Korea, which detracts any challengers. Second is the stable web alliances. U.S. military and economic ties facilitate global interdependence and ensures alliance credibility across historically antagonistic countries, which stamp as low-level conflict and pacifies rogue actors. That's Brand's evidence. Again, the AI add-on one can see that we solve sustainability. It's mishandled from the T-tax and taxation page. We get it because they read a new disadd and impact cards into ensure an AI is able to stimulate society with infinite computation capacity. That means that any threat to the state will be solved to that capacity. The alternative cannot solve state collapse. They dropped the 1 year see the Bohr evidence. This is crushing any opposition to the state, which means that the state would respond to any revolution or resistance by dropping cluster bombs, F-15 drones, and missile strikes, which means that the alternative can definitely not resolve our intent to disease impact. The alternative explicitly cannot solve this. We need institutional checks against it.
The Bohr card was dropped.
The Bohr card was dropped.
It says
State
that
opposition.
the state will drop F-15s and cluster bombs on movements to overthrow it.
They will drop F-15s, cluster bombs. They will overthrow any resistance. That means they can't solve their offense. Remember, we have an impact that is external to the K.
Okay.
AI, it's unlike only basic income can solve. The alternative can never.
Even if it's global, it cannot solve Indian soft power because it's
Even
about
if it's global,
multilateral
it can't
coordination
solve-
of institutions.
It
They
cannot solve
overthrow
some-
institutions.
They overthrow institutions, which means that they can't solve multilateral soft power. All of our offense is external to the K. There's some defense to their internal links because of the concession of the border.
AI too. No explanation of how the
No
all
explanation
AI.
of how all can solve AI. Clearly, gives us
Existential.
100% risk.
Drop that basic income solves it. We have some defense to their things, but